Good evening, and welcome to the House of Law. Tonight, I invite you to come with me into a quiet little street in a sleeping town where the night air rests softly against old stone walls and a small bakery waits behind its glass door. There is no hurry here. Only a dim light inside, a familiar handle beneath the hand, and the gentle beginning of a routine that has happened many times before. If this quiet place brings you a little comfort, you may like to stay close to the House of Law, to subscribe, to leave a soft like, or to share this story with someone who enjoys gentle hours and peaceful tales. And now, let the town grow still around you. The street is narrow, paved with stones that have held the footsteps of many mornings and many nights. By day, carts pass along it. Neighbors greet one another from doorways. Window boxes lean over the upper floors, spilling small leaves and sleepy flowers toward the lane below. But now, all of that has settled. The shutters are closed, the curtains are drawn. A bicycle rests against a wall beside a worn wooden gate. Somewhere above, a single window is cracked open, just enough to let in the coolness of the night. The town is sleeping. Not in silence exactly, but in that softer kind of quiet that belongs to places where people are near, yet resting. There is the faint creak of a sign moving in the breeze. There is the far-off murmur of water in a gutter after an earlier rain. There is the slow settling of old beams in old houses, and near the end of the street, the bakery waits. Its front is simple. A low step, a painted door, two square windows with glass made slightly uneven by age. In the daytime, those windows show baskets of bread, trays of small cakes, and paper bags folded neatly beside a brass scale. But at this hour, the glass reflects the pale blue of night. Behind it, a dim light glows. Not bright enough to wake the street, not sharp enough to reach far. It is only a small amber light from somewhere inside, resting on the edge of a counter, touching the curve of a mixing bowl and catching in the clean panes of the display case. The air near the doorway is cool. It carries the scent of damp stone, a trace of wood, and the very faint memory of flour. The bakery has been closed for hours, yet the place still keeps the warmth of what it is. Even from outside, there is something gentle about it. A bakery is a place of beginnings. Before the rest of the town stirs, before curtains are opened and kettles are set on stoves, before children tie their shoes and shopkeepers turn their signs, the bakery is awake. But not quite yet. This is the moment before that. The moment at the threshold. A key is taken from a pocket. It is an old key, rubbed smooth in places, familiar to the fingers. It finds the lock without any need to look closely. The hand knows the way. The door knows the sound. There is a soft click. Then the faintest push. The door opens slowly, and the night air follows for a breath or two. Inside, the bakery is cool and still. The floorboards give a small answer beneath the first step, not loud, just a quiet note in the room, as though the building is remembering the person who has entered. The door is eased shut again. Another click. And the street remains outside, peaceful, blue, asleep. Within the bakery, the dim light seems warmer now. It reaches over the counter and across the flour dust that never fully leaves a baker's world. There are neat stacks of paper bags, a row of empty shelves, a cloth folded over a basket, a broom leaning in the corner, exactly where it was left. Everything has its place. That is part of the comfort. At night, when a routine begins, the world can feel smaller in the kindest way. There are only a few steps to take, only a few things to touch. A lamp, a hook, an apron, a basin, a wooden work table waiting in the back. The bakery does not ask for haste. It asks for steadiness. A coat is hung on its peg. The apron is lifted from its hook and tied with the same easy motion used on so many mornings that the body remembers before the mind fully wakes. The knot rests at the waist. The sleeves are rolled. The room is still dim. That is all right. There is comfort in beginning by a small light. It lets the space emerge slowly. The counter first, then the shelves, then the doorway to the back room, then the wide table where dough will be mixed, folded, and left to rise beneath clean cloths. The bakery feels old in a pleasant way, not worn out, only lived in, the kind of place where use has made things gentle. The wooden table has pale marks from years of flour. The handles on the drawers are smooth. The tiles near the oven are a little darker than the rest. Every surface has learned patience. Near the front window, the street lamp casts a faint silver shape on the floor. It lies there quietly, angled across the boards. Beyond the glass, the town continues to sleep. A cat crosses the lane without hurry, passing from one shadow to another. Its paws make no sound. It pauses by the bakery step, looks toward the door as if it knows the hour, and then slips away beneath the low arch that leads toward the square. Inside, the first task is simple. Light enough to see. A second lamp is turned on in the back, and the room becomes softer, fuller. Copper pans catch a muted glow. A stack of mixing bowls shines along the rim. A sack of flour rests on a low bench, tied at the top with string. The routine is beginning, not with noise, not with urgency, with small movements, with the opening of a drawer, with the setting out of a bowl, with the brushing of a clean hand across the table, feeling for crumbs that are not there. There is a calm honesty in such work. It begins before praise, before customers, before the front door opens and the bell rings. It begins when the town is dark and the street is empty, when no one is watching, and the first quiet choices of the day are made. The bakery holds those choices gently. A cloth is folded back. A ledger is glanced at. A pencil rests in the crease of the book. There are notes from the evening before, written in a careful hand. More rolls for the school, 2 seed loaves for the widow at number 7, a tray of buns if the weather stays clear, small things, ordinary things. The kind of things that make a town feel tended. And all the while, outside the door, the night air lingers close to the step. It is cool against the glass. It presses lightly at the edges of the frame, then drifts away down the lane. Inside, the dim light glows on. The bowl is placed on the table. The flour is waiting. The routine has begun. The door opens softly, not with a chime that startles, and not with a rush of cold air, but with a quiet inward breath, as though the little bakery has been waiting through the blue hours of morning. Inside, the warmth is gentle. It does not hurry to meet me. It simply rests in the room, held in the old walls, gathered near the ovens, tucked under the wooden counters, and spread across the floorboards in a soft, even hush. For a moment, I stand just inside the door. The world behind me grows smaller. The street, the pale windows, the sleeping houses, all of it settles into the distance. Here, there is only the calm of a room before work begins. The air carries the faint smell of flour and sugar. It is light at first, almost hidden, like a memory of yesterday's loaves or a promise of something still to come. Flour has a quiet scent. It is not bright or sharp. It is soft, dry, pale, like linen folded in a cupboard, like paper kept in a drawer, like the first dusting of snow on a path before footprints arrive. And sugar. Sugar is warmer. Even before it meets butter, or fruit, or the slow heat of an oven, it has its own small brightness. It lingers in the corners of the room, not as sweetness on the tongue, but as an idea of sweetness, waiting patiently. I breathe in gently. Nothing here asks to be rushed. The front room is dim, lit only by the early light pressing against the glass and the faint glow from the back. The tables are still empty. The chairs are tucked in neatly, each one resting in its place as though it, too, has slept through the night. A few crumbs remain near the counter from the day before, tiny golden flecks that have escaped the cloth. They catch the low light for a moment, then disappear again into shadow. The display case is quiet and bare. Its clean shelves wait behind the glass, cool and clear, ready for the first trays that will come later. For now, there are no rolls, no tarts, no dark loaves with split tops, only the calm reflection of the room itself. I move slowly. One step, then another. The floorboards answer in small sounds beneath my feet. Not creaks, exactly, but soft acknowledgments, the way an old room knows the weight of familiar footsteps. Past the counter, there is a narrow passage leading toward the back. The light changes there. It becomes warmer, lower, more golden, not bright enough to wake the room fully, but enough to guide the way. On the wall, a row of hooks holds clean aprons. Their ties hang down in loose lines. A folded towel rests on a small shelf. Beside it, a metal scoop sits inside a bin of flour, its handle turned slightly toward the aisle, waiting for a hand to lift it. Everything has been placed with care. Not perfectly, not in a way that feels cold or arranged, but with the quiet order of daily use. This is the kind of order that comes from repetition. The same door opening before dawn, the same hands tying an apron, the same first touch of flour, the same small cloud rising from a bowl. I walk toward the back room, and the smell grows clearer. Flour, sugar, a trace of butter, and something faintly yeasted from a covered bowl left to rest overnight. There is a deep comfort in that scent. It belongs to work that is gentle but steady, work that begins before the town is awake, work that asks for attention but not urgency. In the back room, the air is warmer still. Here, the bakery feels less like a shop and more like a hearth. A long wooden table stands in the center. Its surface is pale from years of flour. Along its edges are small marks made by use, the soft dents of bowls, the faint lines of knives, the polished places where palms have leaned and dough has been turned. Above it, the light hangs low. It falls in a quiet circle, touching the table, the mixing bowls, the sacks of flour stacked against the wall, the jars of sugar and salt, the small tin of spice with its lid not quite straight. Nothing moves quickly here. Even the shadows seem to settle slowly. Against one wall, the oven waits. It is not yet fully alive, but there is heat within it. A mild and steady warmth, the kind that gathers before bread is ready to rise, before trays are slid in, before the first crusts turn gold. I stand near the table and let the room come into focus. The bowl is there, large, white, and familiar. Beside it rests a wooden spoon, a measuring cup, and a clean cloth folded into a soft square. There is a basket of eggs, each one pale and cool in its shell, a block of butter wrapped in paper, a small dish of sugar, fine and white, waiting like a little drift of morning frost. The back room is not silent. No working room ever truly is. There is the hush of heat, the small settling sound of wood, the faint tick of something cooling or warming. Somewhere, perhaps in the pipework or the old brick, there is a tiny murmur, almost too soft to notice. These are the first sounds of the day. They do not break the quiet. They belong to it. I lay my hand on the edge of the table. The wood is smooth beneath my fingers, with a trace of flour left from earlier work. It feels cool at first, then slowly warmer, as though the table is remembering the room around it. This is where the morning begins, not in a hurry, not with a loud command, but with a simple preparation. A bowl drawn closer, a cloth unfolded, a measure of flour lifted and poured. The soft fall of it is nearly soundless, a pale stream into the waiting bowl. A little sugar follows. It slips from the cup in a finer line, catching the light for an instant before settling into the flour. The two rest together, white upon white, indistinguishable for a moment, until the spoon turns and folds them through each other. Slowly, gently, the work begins. And all around, the back room holds its warmth, its quiet, and the faint sweet scent of flour and sugar in the early morning air. I turn on only a few lights at first, not all of them. Just the small ones that let the room wake slowly. A lamp near the table, a warm glow above the sink, perhaps one soft light over the counter, enough to show the grain of the wood and the quiet shapes waiting there. In this gentle half-light, the kitchen does not feel busy. It feels settled. It feels ready. I stand for a moment before doing anything else, and I listen to the room. There is the faint sound of the house holding its evening stillness. A small creak from somewhere in the boards, a low hum from the refrigerator, the soft presence of water waiting behind the tap. Nothing asks me to hurry. Nothing needs to be done all at once. So I begin with the simplest thing. I wash my hands. The water runs cool for a breath, then warms. I let it move over my fingers and palms, over the backs of my hands, around the wrists. It is an ordinary act, but it gathers the mind. It tells the body that one moment has ended and another has begun. Clean hands, calm focus. This is how many quiet works have always started. Before dough was mixed, before vegetables were trimmed, before a kettle was lifted to the fire, there was water and soap and the small care of beginning properly. I dry my hands on a folded towel and reach for the apron. It hangs on a peg where it belongs. The cloth is plain and soft from use, not new, not delicate. It carries the memory of flour, warm pans, and many small tasks done without fuss. I slip it over my head and tie it at the waist. The knot does not need to be perfect, it only needs to hold. There is comfort in this simple garment. An apron is not grand, yet it changes the way a person stands in a kitchen. It says, quietly, that the work will be cared for. It gathers wandering attention and brings it down to the hands. I look across the counter. The tools are there, but not scattered. A wooden spoon rests in the crock. A small knife lies near the board. A bowl sits open and empty, its curve catching a little of the yellow light. Measuring spoons are nested together. A cloth is folded beside the sink. Each thing has its place, not a rigid place, not a severe place, but a familiar one. When tools belong somewhere, the mind can rest a little. It does not have to search. It does not have to solve. The hand reaches, and the object is waiting. This kind of order is quiet. It is not the kind meant to impress anyone. It is the order of a room that has been used and cared for again, a room that understands the old rhythm of taking out and putting back. I move slowly along the counter and set things more clearly. The knife beside the board, the spoon beside the bowl, the towel near the sink, a small dish for scraps, a jar turned so its label faces forward. These are tiny actions, but they soften the work ahead. They make a path where there might have been clutter. They let the evening remain easy. I open a drawer and hear the faint wooden slide of it. Inside, the tools lie in their shallow spaces. The whisk, the peeler, The measuring cups nested one inside another like small metal moons. I choose what is needed and no more. Then I close the drawer gently. There is a steadiness in not taking too much. A kitchen can become crowded so quickly. One more bowl, one more pan, one more thought. But tonight there is no need for excess. The room asks only for what is useful, so I follow that request. A steady pace, without hurry. I turn back to the sink and rinse the board. The water runs over the surface and carries away the last little dust of the day. I wipe it with the cloth and set it down flat. The sound is small. Wood meeting counter. Cloth passing over stone. Water falling into the basin. These sounds have no sharp edges. They settle the air. I notice the way light touches the faucet. I notice the quiet shine at the rim of the bowl. I notice the apron against my hands when I smooth it once at the front. To listen to a room is not only to hear it, it is to sense what pace belongs there. Some rooms invite quickness. Some invite talk. Some invite brightness and movement. But this room, at this hour, invites care. It invites the slow placing of things. It invites the mind to become simple. I take one breath in and let it go. Then another. The tasks are not heavy. They do not crowd around me. They line up one by one, each waiting its turn. The light above the sink glows warmly. The tools are set where they belong. My hands are clean. And in the soft order of the kitchen, the evening becomes easier to hold. I do not need to rush toward the next thing. I only need to stand here for a moment, with the apron tied, the counter clear, and the quiet room listening back. The room has settled into its evening shape. Not dark, not bright, but gently lit, as if every corner has agreed to soften itself for the night. The lamps are low. Their shades hold the light close, warming it before letting it spill across the table, the walls, and the quiet floor. Nothing shines too strongly. Nothing asks to be noticed all at once. The light simply rests where it lands. A small glow gathers near the kitchen counter. Another lies across the edge of a chair. A thin line of gold touches the handle of a cupboard, then fades into shadow. These small pieces of brightness are enough. They make the room feel known and kind. In this soft light, I begin to take stock of what is here, not in a hurried way. There is no need to count quickly or reach for everything at once. It is only the simple comfort of looking around and noticing what will carry the night along. On the counter, there is a folded cloth. Beside it, a wooden spoon rests with its bowl turned slightly upward. A few jars stand near the wall, their glass catching the lamplight in muted flecks. Flour, sugar, oats, perhaps a small jar of spice, dark and fragrant, waiting beneath its lid. There is something peaceful about familiar ingredients. They do not demand much. They wait quietly. They remind me that many good things begin in plain forms, a measure of this, a pinch of that, a little warmth, a little patience. The air holds a quiet, even background sound, a low hum from somewhere in the house. It might be the refrigerator. It might be the soft breath of heat moving through a vent. It is steady and untroubled, a simple thread of sound stretched through the evening. It does not interrupt the silence. It belongs to it. The hum makes the room feel inhabited, even when no one is speaking. It fills the spaces between small movements, the touch of a hand on a jar, the soft pull of a drawer, the gentle sound of a lid being set down. I notice the ingredients one by one. A bowl sits ready, wide and pale in the lamplight. Its rim is smooth from use. It has held so many quiet tasks before this one. Batter mixed on a rainy afternoon. Dough gathered on a winter morning. Fruit washed and waiting in cool water. Tonight it is empty, but not lonely. Near the bowl, there is a small dish of salt, just enough to sharpen sweetness and deepen warmth. Beside it, a jar of cinnamon or nutmeg might wait in shadow. The scent is faint at first, then a little clearer when the lid is turned. It rises slowly, dry, warm, and familiar. Some smells seem to belong to evening. They make the room feel closer. They bring the shelves nearer, the table nearer, the memory of other quiet nights nearer. I let the cupboard door open with care. Inside, the shelves hold their simple order. Not perfect, but known. A tin in the back. A bag folded over at the top. A bottle with a label worn at the edge. These small signs of use give the place its comfort. They say that life has moved gently through here before and will continue to do so. There is no need for grand abundance. Only enough. Enough flour in the bag. Enough milk in the jug. Enough butter wrapped and cool. Enough warmth in the room. Enough quiet in the hour. I set each thing where it can be easily reached. The movements are slow and measured. The jar comes forward. The spoon is placed beside the bowl. A small knife rests on the board. The cloth is unfolded, then smoothed once with the palm of the hand. The low light makes every object seem softer at the edges. A ceramic cup, a brown egg, a paper packet folded twice. The curve of a measuring spoon. All of them look simple and settled, as if they have been waiting for this part of the evening. The background hum continues. It is not a song, but it has a rhythm, a constant note under everything else. It helps the mind stop reaching for sharp thoughts. It gives the room a quiet center. Outside, the world may be growing darker, but in here the darkness feels gentle. The windows reflect the lamps. The glass shows only warm shapes and dim outlines. Beyond it, the night is present, but not intrusive. Inside, everything is close enough to touch. The table, the bowl, the cloth, the ingredients arranged in a small, quiet gathering. There is comfort in familiar surroundings. The way one drawer opens with a soft scrape, the way one shelf always holds the things needed most often, the way the floor gives a tiny sound near the sink. These details are so ordinary that they almost disappear, until the evening slows down enough to notice them. And when they are noticed, they are reassuring. They say, this is a place where things are known. This is a place where a spoon has its drawer, where a cup has its hook, where the light falls kindly, and where the night can begin without hurry. I stand for a moment and take in the arrangement. The ingredients are ready, but nothing has begun yet. This pause has its own purpose. Before mixing, before measuring, before warmth changes one thing into another, there is this quiet inventory, a small act of care, a check of what is present, a noticing of what is enough. The lamp glows softly over the counter. The jars remain still. The hum carries on beneath the silence. The room feels calm, gathered and familiar. And in that calm, the night seems to open a little more gently. One ingredient at a time, one soft sound at a time, one warm pool of light at a time. The table is quiet now. Only a few things are needed. A bowl with a wide, patient rim, a wooden spoon resting beside it, a small dish of salt, a cup for water, a little measure for yeast if the dough asks for it, and the flour, pale and soft, waiting in its paper bag. There is a comfort in seeing simple ingredients lined up in order. Nothing is hidden. Nothing is hurried. Each thing has its own place, and each place feels known. The flour comes first. I open the bag gently, folding back the top without tearing it too far. A faint, dry scent rises from within. It is not strong. It is almost like dust from a clean cupboard or sunlight on grain. The scoop dips in. It moves through the flour slowly, making a soft hollow. The flour settles around it in tiny slides. I lift the scoop and let the excess fall back with a quiet hush. Measuring is a small act of calm. Not too much, not too little, just enough. The flour is leveled with the back of a knife or with the flat edge of a spoon. A simple motion, one side to the other. The extra flour drifts away and returns to the bag where it belongs. Then the measured flour goes into the bowl. It lands softly. A pale mound forms in the center. Another scoop follows. Again, the dip, the lift, the leveling, the soft fall into the bowl. There is no need to rush this part. Dough begins before hands ever touch it. It begins in these quiet choices, in the small attention given to what is plain and useful. Flour is the body of the bread. It holds the shape, it gathers the water. It gives the dough its weight and its gentleness. When the flour is all in the bowl, the surface looks like a tiny hill under morning mist. I tap the scoop once against the rim, just lightly, and set it down. Now, the salt. A little salt, measured with care. It is not there to make the bread sharp. It is there to bring the flavor forward, to steady it, to make the simple taste complete. The spoon enters the small dish. The grains shine faintly. A level measure is enough. The salt is scattered over the flour, not in one heavy place, but across the top like a thin frost. This helps it spread when the mixing begins. If yeast is part of the dough, it waits in its own small bowl. Fine grains, beige and quiet. It is measured gently, too. The spoon is filled, leveled, and tipped into the flour or into warm water, depending on the way the dough is being made. Everything has an order. Not a strict order that worries the hands, but a useful one. A kind order. Flour first, then salt, then yeast, then water. The cup is filled with water that is neither cold nor hot, just warm enough to feel mild against the skin, like bath water left to cool. Like a cup held between both palms. Water is the part that changes everything. Before water, the flour is loose. After water, it begins to remember how to become one thing. I pour only a little at first. A narrow stream slips into the bowl and darkens the flour where it lands. The spoon follows, moving in slow circles. Around the edge, through the center, around again, the dry flour folds over the wet places. Small clumps appear. They are uneven at first, and that is all right. Dough does not become smooth in a single moment. The spoon scrapes gently along the side of the bowl. It gathers what clings there. It turns it inward. A little more water is added, not all at once, just enough to invite the flour to join. The mixing continues, steady and untroubled. The spoon grows heavier. The dry patches grow smaller. The pale flour becomes shaggy, then damp, then gathered into soft pieces that pull toward one another. This is an orderly preparation, but it is not stiff. It leaves room for feeling. Some flour is thirstier than other flour. Some kitchens are dry. Some days are humid. The hands and eyes learn to notice. If the dough seems too dry, a spoonful of water helps. If it seems too wet, a small dusting of flour may be enough. There is patience in that kind of adjustment. A little at a time. A little, and then wait. The bowl turns beneath one hand. The spoon moves with the other. The rhythm becomes simple. Turn the bowl, draw the spoon, fold the mixture, rest for a breath. Then again. The ingredients are no longer separate now. The salt has disappeared into the flour. The water has drawn the dry parts together. The yeast, if present, is hidden inside the gathering mass. The dough is rough, but it is becoming. It does not need to be beautiful yet. It only needs to be mixed enough to rest. There is something deeply peaceful about this stage. The bowl holds the beginning. The table holds the bowl. The room holds the table. and everything seems to settle into its proper place. A bit of flour remains on the counter, a few grains of salt cling to the edge of the little dish. The measuring spoon lies still. The water cup is lighter than before. Each object has done its part. The wooden spoon presses once more through the dough, drawing the last dry streaks into the center. It is slow work, but it is never empty work. It asks only for attention and gives back a quiet feeling of order. When the dough begins to pull away from the sides of the bowl, I pause. The surface is uneven. There are folds and ridges. There are tender seams where wet and dry have met. That is enough for now. The spoon is lifted, and a little dough clings to it. I scrape it back into the bowl with calm, careful fingers. Nothing is wasted. Nothing needs to be perfect. The bowl is covered for a moment, or simply left as it is while the table is cleared. The flour bag is folded shut. The salt is moved back to its place. The measuring tools are set aside to be washed. The preparation has a quiet ending, not a grand one, just a clean space, a gathered dough, and the soft knowledge that simple ingredients have become something more than they were. Flour, salt, water, and time, measured calmly, mixed slowly, held in a bowl, waiting for the next gentle touch. The first dough of the night begins without hurry. The flour has been resting in its bowl, pale and quiet, holding the faint warmth of the room. The water has been added slowly. The salt has settled in. The leaven, or yeast, has been stirred through with patient care. And now the separate things begin to become one thing. At first, there is only a rough mixture. A wooden spoon moves through it with a soft drag. It turns and gathers. It presses against the side of the bowl, then lifts, bringing a little flour with it each time. The motion is simple. Around the bowl, through the middle, fold and press, around again. Slow stirring has always belonged to the nighttime kitchen. It asks for no sharp attention. It does not need speed. It only asks that the hand return to the bowl again and again until the dough begins to understand itself. The first texture is uneven. Some places are wet and shining. Some places are still dusty with flour. The spoon meets small pockets of resistance, then slips through softer portions. A little dough clings to the handle. A little remains at the bottom of the bowl. But with each turn, the mixture changes. This is one of the quietest transformations in cooking. Nothing leaps. Nothing rushes. Flour and water simply keep meeting over and over until the dry edges fade. The dough becomes heavier. It begins to pull together. The bowl grows cleaner as the soft mass collects what was scattered. I like to imagine the many hands that have known this same moment in cottages, farm kitchens, bakeries, and small rooms lit by a single lamp. A person standing at a table after sunset, a bowl before them, a day behind them, bread beginning beneath their hands. The movement is old, and it is calming because it is so clear. Stir, fold, press, turn the bowl a little. Stir, fold, press. There is comfort in a task that repeats. When the spoon can no longer move easily, the hand takes over. Fingers touch the dough. It is cool at first, or gently warm, depending on the water. It is sticky, not yet smooth. It holds to the skin and stretches in short strands. This is not a sign of failure. It is simply the beginning. The dough is tipped onto a lightly floured surface, or sometimes kept in the bowl. Either way, the motion remains steady. The heel of the hand presses forward. The dough lengthens. Then it is folded back toward the center. A small turn. Then press again. Forward, fold, turn, forward, fold, fold, turn. This is kneading in its plainest form. The body learns it quickly. The arms and shoulders soften into the pattern. The mind, which may have been wandering in many directions, begins to settle around the movement. There is no need to force the dough. Too much pressure is not necessary. A calm, repeated motion is enough. The dough responds to patience. It gathers strength gradually, not from harsh handling, but from contact and time. As kneading continues, the texture develops. What was sticky becomes smoother. What was lumpy becomes even. The surface changes from dull to faintly satiny. The dough begins to stretch instead of tear. It feels alive in a quiet way, elastic and soft beneath the palm. This change comes from the working of the flour with water. Inside the dough, fine strands form and connect. They give bread its shape, its rise, and its gentle chew. But here, at the table, there is no need to think too much about the science. The hands can feel what is happening. A dough that was loose begins to hold itself. A dough that clung to everything begins to release. A dough that seemed rough becomes calm. The surface of the table receives each motion. The bowl waits nearby with traces of flour along its rim. The room is quiet except for the soft push of dough, the little hush of it against wood or stone, and the occasional breath of the person kneading. There is something especially peaceful about making bread at night. The outside world has slowed. Footsteps are fewer. Windows grow dark. The work of the day has thinned, and the work of bread belongs to a slower clock. Kneading gives the hands something gentle to do while the thoughts settle. Press the dough away, fold it back, turn it slightly, begin again. The rhythm is not unlike walking at an easy pace, or rocking a cradle, or sweeping a floor in long, quiet strokes. It steadies the mind because it gives the mind a simple place to rest, not empty exactly, but clear. There is a kind of listening in kneading. The hand listens for softness. The palm listens for resistance. The fingertips notice whether the dough needs a dusting of flour or a little more time. The eyes see when the surface begins to smooth. The whole task becomes a conversation without words, and the answer is always gentle. Continue, not quickly, just continue. Some bakers count the turns, some watch the clock, some go by feel alone. In a quiet kitchen, feel may be the most restful guide. The dough tells its story slowly. At first, it is shaggy. Then it is pliable. Then it becomes soft and springing, as if holding a small breath within it. A thumb pressed into the surface leaves a mark that slowly rises back. The dough can be gathered into a round. Its underside can be tucked inward, making a smooth skin on top. It rests in the hands with a pleasing weight. This first dough of the night has crossed a small threshold. It is no longer flour and water and leaven in separate parts. It is a single developing thing. It has been stirred into being, folded into shape, and steadied through repetition. The hands may be lightly dusted with flour. A little dough may remain beneath the nails. The table may carry faint marks from the work. These are simple signs of a task done with care. The dough is placed back into its bowl, smooth side up. A cloth is laid over it, not tightly, but softly. It will rest now. It will rise in its own time. Nothing more needs to be asked of it for the moment. And in the quiet after kneading, the room feels a little more still. The repeated motion has done more than shape the dough. It has shaped the pace of the evening. It has drawn the mind away from hurry and returned it to the body, to the hands, to the table, to the soft, warm promise of bread. Stirring and folding, pressing and turning, a simple rhythm made again and again until the dough is calm, and the night is calm with it. The dough waits on the table now, soft and slightly uneven, with a quiet weight of its own. A little flour rests beneath it, like a pale dusting of morning frost. Not too much, only enough to keep it from clinging too closely to the wood. The surface of the table is calm beneath my hands. The room feels warm but not hurried. Nothing needs to be rushed here. I place my palms against the dough and begin the simple rhythm. Press, fold, and turn. Press, fold, and turn. At first, the dough may seem a little rough. It may pull apart at the edges, or cling to the fingers, or resist being shaped. That is all right. Dough has its own way of becoming. It does not arrive finished. It changes slowly under steady hands. I press it forward with the heel of my palm, not sharply, not with force, just with a firm, even movement. Then I fold it back over itself, gathering what has stretched. I turn it a little and begin again. Press, fold, turn. There is comfort in work like this. It asks for attention, but not worry. It gives the hands something to do while the mind grows quiet. The body learns the rhythm quickly. The shoulders soften. The breath settles. Inhale as the dough gathers close. Exhale as it is pressed away. Fold and turn. Again. Kneading is one of the oldest kitchen gestures. Long before measuring cups shone in cupboards, long before ovens were fitted with dials and lights, hands knew this motion. People pressed grain and water into life, had low tables, on stone slabs, in wooden bowls, beneath open rafters, near warm hearths. They knew the feel of dough before they knew the words for gluten or fermentation. They knew when it was ready because the dough told them. And still, it tells. Under the palms, the texture begins to change. The surface grows smoother. The dough becomes more elastic. It stretches rather than tears. It holds together with a quiet strength. What was once shaggy and uncertain begins to feel whole. There is no need to count too carefully. No need to chase perfection. Bread is patient. It responds to steadiness. A few minutes more, a few minutes less, and the dough continues on its way. Press, fold, turn. The motion is gentle, but it has purpose. Each push lengthens and strengthens. Each fold gathers the dough back into itself. Each turn gives another side the same care. Nothing is neglected. Nothing is forced. This is the kind of task that makes time feel rounder. The minutes do not hurry past. They widen. They make space for the warmth of the hands, the scent of flour, the quiet sound of dough meeting wood. A soft hush. A faint pat. A slow return. If the dough sticks, I add only the smallest dusting of flour. Too much can make the loaf heavy. So I wait a moment before deciding. Sometimes dough that seems sticky only needs another fold. Sometimes what feels unruly becomes smooth with patience. The lesson is simple and old. Not everything that clings must be corrected at once. Some things only need time. The dough warms as it is worked. It takes in the touch of the room, the pressure of the hands, the calm of repeated motion. Its surface becomes soft and satiny. When I press a finger lightly into it, the mark slowly rises back, as if waking from a small dream. That is enough. I gather it into a rounded shape, turning the edges beneath so the top rests smooth and quiet. It fits in the hands like something alive, though very still. There is a small tenderness in that. Flour, water, salt, and yeast, simple things, now holding a promise that cannot be rushed. The bowl is waiting nearby. I set the dough inside it and cover it gently. A clean cloth will do, or a lid set lightly in place. The covering keeps the surface from drying while the yeast continues its hidden work. Now, the hands can rest. The dough has been kneaded. It has been shaped. And now it must rise. This part of bread making is almost silent. There is little to do but wait. The bowl is placed somewhere warm, not hot, somewhere sheltered from drafts, a corner of the counter, a place near the stove after the cooking is done, a quiet shelf where the air is steady. Inside the dough, the yeast begins to breathe in its own small way. It feeds on what the flour has offered. It releases tiny pockets of gas, slowly lifting the dough from within. The change is gradual. At first, it seems as though nothing is happening. The dough sits beneath its cloth, modest and still. But stillness does not mean nothing is happening. A loaf becomes itself in quiet. While the dough rests, the kitchen rests too. The flour sack is folded closed. The spoon is rinsed. The table is wiped with slow movements. A little dust of flour remains in the grain of the wood, soft as chalk. The bowl sits nearby, covered and warm, asking for no attention except trust. This is a calm sense of time. Not the time of clocks and alarms, but the time of swelling dough, softening light, and a room that breathes with you. There is no need to lift the cloth again and again. The dough knows what to do. The yeast knows. The warmth knows. The waiting is part of the making. And in this waiting, there is rest for the baker as well. Perhaps I sit by the window for a while. Perhaps the day outside is fading toward evening. The sound of the world grows lower. A distant wheel on a road, a bird settling in a hedge, the soft tick of cooling metal from the stove. Nothing presses. Nothing asks to be finished quickly. The dough rises in its bowl, slowly, gently, almost secretly. After enough time has passed, the cloth lifts and the change is visible. The dough has grown fuller. It has rounded upward against the sides of the bowl. It looks lighter now, though it weighs the same in the hand. Air has entered the bread like a quiet thought. I touch it with care. It is soft, cushioned, alive with small bubbles beneath the surface. This rise is not a dramatic thing. It is peaceful. It is the result of warmth, time, and trust. The dough did not need to be watched every moment. It only needed the right conditions and the chance to become. So much of bread is like that. A steady beginning, a patient rhythm, a rest in a warm place. The hands press, fold, and turn, and then they let go. The breath stays even. The movement stays simple. The clock may keep its own small count, but the dough follows a gentler measure. It rises when it is ready, and for now, that is enough. The dough is resting now. It sits in its bowl, covered and still, gathered into itself after the slow work of mixing and kneading. The surface has been smoothed by hand, and beneath the cloth it holds the shape of a quiet mound. There is nothing to force at this point, nothing to hurry. The work has changed from motion into waiting. This pause is part of the making. It is not empty time. It is time with a purpose so gentle that it almost disappears. The flour has met the water. The yeast has been stirred awake. The salt has settled into the dough. And now, warmth begins its patient work. The bowl is placed where the air is steady. Not too hot, not too cool, just warm enough for the dough to loosen and grow at its own pace. A folded towel rests over the top, keeping the surface from drying. Beneath it, the dough is hidden from sight, but not forgotten. It is simply being allowed to rise in peace. I like this part of the process. There is a kindness in stepping away. The hands have done what they needed to do. Now the dough must do what only it can do. Slowly, almost invisibly, it begins to expand. Tiny pockets form within it. The structure softens, strengthens, and breathes. In old kitchens, this moment would have been familiar. A bowl set near the hearth, a cloth tucked around it. Someone moving softly through the room, tending to other small tasks, while the dough rested nearby. The rhythm of baking was never only about effort. It was also about knowing when to leave something alone. So the bowl remains covered, and the bench is cleared. Loose flour is brushed aside, not completely, but enough to make space. The wooden surface keeps a faint dusting from earlier work, a pale memory of kneading. A little more flour is set nearby, ready for the next stage. Not too much, just enough. A lightly floured bench is a quiet kind of welcome. It keeps the dough from catching, but it does not bury it. Too much flour can make the dough stiff. Too little can make it cling. The right amount is found by touch, by attention, by the simple habit of noticing. The trays are brought out next. They are set down gently, one by one. Their metal surfaces catch the soft light of the room. Some may be dark from years of use, seasoned by heat and time. Others may be pale and clean, waiting for their first loaves. Each one is given its place. A tray is not only a surface, it is a promise of shape. Soon, the risen dough will be divided, formed, and laid upon it. But not yet. For now, the trays wait as patiently as the bowl does. Perhaps a sheet of parchment is placed over them. Perhaps a little flour is scattered across the surface. Perhaps they are lightly greased by hand. A thin sheen spread carefully from edge to edge. These are small preparations, quiet and practical. They make the next movement easier when the dough is ready. There is comfort in preparing before the need arrives. It keeps the room calm. It keeps the hands unhurried. When the rising is done, everything will already be in its place. The bench waits. The trays wait. The bowl rests beneath its cloth, and the warmth remains consistent. This matters more than it may seem. Dough responds to the room around it. A sudden chill can slow it. A harsh heat can rush it. But steady warmth allows the rise to unfold in balance. Not quickly, not sharply, just steadily. In this gentle heat, the yeast feeds and releases tiny bubbles. The dough becomes lighter from within. It does not announce the change. It simply grows softer, rounder, and more alive. From the outside, the covered bowl looks unchanged. But beneath the cloth, the work is continuing. This is one of the quiet lessons of bread. Some things are happening even when nothing seems to move. A resting bowl can be full of change. A still room can hold a hidden rising. And so, the pause feels natural. There is no need to fill it with noise. The hands may rinse the mixing bowl used for scraps, wipe the spoon, fold the cloths, and return the flour sack to its place. A little dust stays on the fingers. A soft trace of dough remains at the edge of the table before it is wiped away. The kitchen grows orderly again. Not perfect, just ready. There is a special quiet after kneading. The body remembers the motion even after it stops. The palms seem to hold the warmth of the dough. The table seems to hold the rhythm. Everything settles. A tray is shifted slightly to make room. The flour is set within reach. A scraper lies nearby. A clean cloth is folded at the corner of the bench. These objects are simple, but together they create a sense of ease. When the dough has risen enough, the next step will not feel sudden. It will feel like the natural continuation of this quiet interval. The bowl remains covered and still, but not sleeping. It is resting in the way living things rest, gathering strength in softness. The dough is becoming more workable, more elastic, more open. It is taking in the warmth of the room and turning it into lightness. There is an old patience in this. A patience found in kitchens before timers, before exact settings, before bright appliances and measured displays. People learned to read the dough by sight and touch. They watched how it rose. They felt the air with their hands. They knew the difference between warmth that comforts and heat that presses too hard. Even now, that knowledge is still available. It asks only for attention. The cloth over the bowl may lift slightly as the dough grows. It may remain still for a long while. Either way, there is no need to check too often. The dough does better when left undisturbed, so the room keeps its gentle temperature. A window stays closed if the air outside is cool. The bowl is kept away from a draft. If the day is cold, the dough may sit near a warm wall or close to the oven after it has been used, but never where the heat is harsh. Warmth should surround it quietly, like a blanket, like afternoon light on a table, like the low glow of a kitchen that has not forgotten its purpose. The trays are ready now. The bench is lightly floured. The tools are close at hand. Everything has been prepared without rush. And still, the most important thing is the resting bowl. Covered, steady, changing in silence. The pause continues, and it feels complete in itself. There is nothing missing from it. Waiting is not a delay here. It is part of the recipe, as necessary as flour, water, yeast, and salt. In this quiet time, the dough rises and the kitchen listens. The covered bowl remains in its warm place. The cloth lies softly across the rim. The bench waits with its fine dusting of flour. The trays rest nearby, prepared and still. All is ready, but nothing is rushed. The rise is allowed to finish in its own gentle way. The first batch has settled into its quiet place, and the kitchen seems to understand what comes next. There is no need to hurry. The air is still warm from the earlier work. The table holds a faint memory of flour, and the bowl rests near the center, ready to be used again. Everything has a softness to it now, not sleepy exactly, but settled, as though the room has found its pace, and I am only following it. Before the second batch begins, the tools are arranged in order. This small act matters. The wooden spoon is placed to one side. The measuring cup is set nearby. A small dish of salt waits close to the flour. The cloth is folded once, then again, and laid where it can be reached without searching. The trays are pulled forward, clean and open, their pale surfaces catching a little of the light. Nothing is crowded. The table has room to breathe. When tools are arranged in order, the hands do not have to wander. They know where to go. The work becomes quieter because there are fewer interruptions. A bowl here, a spoon there, a tray at the far edge, and a cloth resting close enough to cover the dough when the time comes. In older kitchens, this kind of order was not always written down. It was learned slowly. A child might watch a grandmother place things in the same way each morning. A young baker might notice how the flour scoop was never far from the bin, and how the cloths were stacked within easy reach. The pattern became part of the craft. And perhaps that is why preparation can feel so restful. It is not only about making the work easier, it is about creating a small path for the body to follow. I draw the flour closer and open it gently. A faint, dry scent rises from it, plain and comforting. The scoop dips in, slow and steady. The flour falls into the bowl in soft heaps, quiet against the sides. Then comes the dusting. A little flour is scattered across the table, not too much, just enough to soften the surface. It lands in pale streaks, catching in the small marks left by earlier work. A finger drawn through it would leave a clean line. The table looks almost wintered for a moment, touched by a thin white layer. This light spreading of flour is one of the simplest preparations, and also one of the most beautiful. It asks for care, but not precision. Too little, and the dough may cling. Too much, and the dough can grow dry. So the hand learns to scatter with restraint. A pinch lifted between fingers, a small shake of the wrist, a gentle sweep across the board. The surface is ready. The bowl is ready. The trays are waiting. and the second batch can begin in the same quiet rhythm as the first. Water is added slowly. The spoon turns through the flour, and the mixture changes by degrees. At first, it is dry and uneven. Then it gathers in damp pieces. A little more water, another turn, and the pieces begin to meet each other. There is no sudden transformation, only a steady joining. The spoon moves around the bowl, scraping the sides with a soft sound. Flour from the edges is folded toward the middle. The mixture thickens. The hand adjusts. The bowl turns slightly. Each motion has a place. This is the peaceful part of repeated work. The first batch teaches the hands what to expect. By the second, the movements are more familiar. The spoon feels right in the palm. The weight of the flour is understood. The dough tells its small story through texture, and the hands listen without strain. If it seems too dry, a little water is added. If it seems too wet, a light touch of flour waits on the table. Nothing is corrected in haste. The dough is not scolded into shape. It is encouraged. It is drawn together with patient turns, with quiet pressure, with attention given in small amounts. The cloth waits beside the bowl, folded and clean. Its weave is simple, perhaps linen, perhaps cotton, the kind that softens with use. Cloths like this have always belonged near bread. They cover, protect, and rest lightly over what is rising. They keep the surface from drying. They mark a pause in the work. A cloth is a sign that time has entered the kitchen. Not busy time, not measured time alone, but gentle time, the kind that lets dough change without being watched too closely. The trays, too, are part of this quiet order. They stand ready before they are needed. This prevents the small scramble that can disturb the mood of baking. There will be no searching in cupboards, no sudden clearing of space, no sharp clatter to break the calm. They are already there, clean, open, waiting. The second batch loosens from the bowl and comes to the floured table. It lands with a soft weight. The flour beneath it keeps it from sticking, and the hands begin their work. Press forward, fold back, turn slightly, again. The rhythm is humble and old. Kneading does not need to be forceful. It needs to be steady. The palms press, the fingers guide, and the dough slowly becomes smoother. It resists a little at first, then relaxes. It gathers itself. The surface changes from rough to calm, from broken to whole. A small dusting of flour keeps the work flowing. Not a storm of it, not a cloud, just a light touch where it is needed. The flour marks the table, the fingers, the heel of the hand. It settles on the edge of the bowl and rests there like a fine powder. There is beauty in these small traces. They show that something is being made. They show the passage of hands across a simple task. And in the room, the quiet remains. Outside, the day may be moving on. A cart may pass in the lane. A bird may shift on a branch. Somewhere, a door may open and close. But here, at the table, the pace is slow and even. The second batch is not a repetition in the dull sense. It is a return. It is the comfort of doing again what was done before, with the same care, the same tools, the same patient attention. The mind does not need to reach far. It can rest inside the pattern. The dough is shaped at last into a smooth round. It is lifted gently and placed into its waiting place. The cloth is unfolded and laid over it, light and neat. The corners fall softly. Beneath the fabric, the dough is hidden from sight, but not forgotten. The table is dusted once more with the side of the hand. Loose flour is gathered into a small, pale line. The spoon is set down. The bowl is turned aside. The trays remain ready for what will come in time. There is a deep calm in preparation without rush. It allows each object to be itself. The tray holds space. The cloth keeps warmth. The flour softens the table. The bowl receives. The spoon turns. And the hands, having learned the rhythm, move gently from one thing to the next. Nothing more is needed just now. Only the quiet kitchen, the covered dough, and the light dusting of flour left behind, like a soft trace of work done carefully. The first dough was resting now, covered and quiet, taking its time in the warmth of the room. There was no need to hurry it. Bread has its own manner of keeping time. It does not answer to clocks alone. It listens to the heat of the kitchen, to the strength of the yeast, to the moisture in the flour, and to the patience of the hands that made it. So while the first bowl sat near the hearth, softly rising beneath its cloth, the baker began again. A second batch. The same work, in the same order, with the same steady care. The flour was measured first. Not guessed, not thrown in by habit alone, but measured with the calm certainty of someone who had done this often enough to know that routine is not dull. Routine is a kind of quiet wisdom. A scoop of flour was lifted from the bin. It settled into the measure with a faint, dry whisper. The top was leveled, gently, leaving a smooth, pale surface behind. Then came the next measure, and the next. Each one was added to the bowl as though it mattered. Because it did. In kitchens like this, nothing was wasted if it could be helped. A little too much flour could make the bread heavy. Too little could leave the dough slack and weak. The baker understood this balance, not as a rule written on a page, but as knowledge kept in the hands. Salt followed. A small amount, but important. Salt steadied the flavor. It strengthened the dough. It reminded the sweetness of the grain not to run too far ahead of itself. Then the yeast mixture was prepared again. Warm water, not hot, not cold, but held in that gentle middle place where living things wake slowly. The baker tested it with a finger. There was no grand gesture in it. Just a brief touch, a small pause, and then a nod of understanding. The water was right. The yeast was stirred in, and the liquid grew cloudy. A faint smell rose from it after a little while, earthy, alive, like grain and air meeting for the first time. While it rested, the baker turned back to the first bowl. The cloth was lifted at one corner. Underneath, the dough had begun to swell, not suddenly, not dramatically, just enough to show that something quiet was happening within it. The surface had smoothed a little. The mass of it looked softer, fuller, more at ease in the bowl. A fingertip pressed lightly near the edge. The dough gave way and slowly began to return. That was good. It was still rising, still gathering strength, still becoming what it needed to become. The cloth was laid back over it. No more was asked of it for the moment. Then the second batch continued. The yeast water was poured into the waiting flour. At first, the mixture was uneven. Dry flour clung to the sides. Wet patches gathered in the middle. The spoon moved through it slowly, drawing the edges inward, folding the loose flour into the center. The sound was familiar. A soft scrape against the bowl, a thicker pull as the dough began to form, a pause to turn the bowl. Then another stroke. This was the rhythm. Not fast, not forceful, just repeated, again and again, until the separate ingredients forgot they had ever been apart. There is comfort in work like this, the kind of work that has a beginning, a middle, and a patient end. The baker did not need to invent anything. The pattern was already known. Measure, mix, rest, knead, rise. And yet each batch was not exactly the same. The flour might be a little drier today. The room might be warmer. The yeast might be livelier. The hands might feel the dough differently after the first bowl had been made. So the baker watched. The spoon slowed as the mixture thickened. The dough gathered in rough folds. A bit more water was added. just a little, enough to bring the last dry streaks together. Then the spoon was set aside. The hands took over. They pressed into the soft, uneven mass, turning it, folding it, encouraging it to become whole. There was flour on the fingers now, a dusting on the table, a pale mark along the edge of the bowl. These small signs belonged to the room. They were part of the morning or the afternoon, part of the work that filled the house with purpose. The second dough came together more quickly than the first. Perhaps the baker's hands were already warmed by the earlier task. Perhaps the body remembered the motion and entered it more easily. Fold, press, turn. Fold, press, turn. The movement was simple enough to let the mind settle. Outside, the day continued in its quiet way. Light shifted across the floor. The air near the hearth held its gentle warmth. Somewhere in the room, the first dough rested beneath its cloth, rising by degrees. The baker checked it again after a time. This time, the cloth lifted to reveal a fuller shape. The dough had climbed higher in the bowl. Tiny bubbles lay hidden beneath the surface. It looked alive, though it did not move in any way the eye could easily follow. That is one of the old mysteries of bread. It changes while appearing still. It grows in silence. It keeps its labor inward. The baker looked at it with satisfaction, then covered it once more. The second dough was nearly ready for its own rest. It had become smoother now. The rough edges were disappearing. The surface had begun to take on that soft stretch that told the baker the flour and water had found their bond. A final turn. A final press. Then it was gathered into a round. The bowl was cleaned of clinging bits and lightly dusted. The dough was placed inside. A cloth was laid over it, just as before. Now there were two bowls resting in the warmth, one farther along, one just beginning, both following the same path. This is the quiet strength of consistency. Not sameness without thought, but care repeated until it becomes dependable. The measured ingredients, the familiar mixing rhythm, the patient checking of the rise. Each act was small. Together, they made bread. And in the gentle order of the kitchen, the baker stood for a moment between the two covered bowls, listening to the hush of work that continued without sound. The first dough rising. The second dough settling. The hands resting at last, ready when the dough was ready. Ah! By now, the dough has been resting for some time. It has been left in a quiet place, covered from the air, given warmth enough to soften, and time enough to change. There is a kind of stillness in this moment that asks for very little from the hands. Before shaping a loaf, I do not hurry toward the bench. I look first. The bowl may seem simple, just flour, water, salt, and leaven gathered together, but under the cloth, the dough has been slowly becoming lighter. It has stretched itself with tiny pockets of air. It has relaxed. It has grown. The surface may look smoother now, rounded in its own gentle way, rising toward the cloth, as though it has taken a slow breath and held it. I lift the covering carefully. There is no need for sudden movement. The dough has been resting, and I meet it with the same patience. A good rise is not always tall and proud. Sometimes it is modest. Sometimes it spreads a little more than it climbs. Sometimes it shows itself in small signs rather than grand ones. A rounded edge against the bowl, a softer surface, a faint tremble when the bowl is moved, tiny bubbles near the side, catching the light. These are quiet things. They do not call out. They wait to be noticed. So I notice them. I turn the bowl a little, slowly, and watch how the dough holds itself. If it has risen well, it seems alive with a gentle strength. Not stiff, not slack, but balanced somewhere between the two. The surface may still be a little uneven. That is all right. Bread is not made of perfect lines. It is made of small changes, accepted one by one. I bring one hand close to the dough and press a fingertip lightly against the surface. Only a little pressure, just enough to ask a question. The dough answers in its own way. If it springs back quickly with a firm push, it may need more rest. If it does not return at all, it may have gone too far. But if the mark fills in slowly, with softness and a light spring, then the dough is ready to be handled. This is not a test of force, it is a conversation. A small touch, a small response, a moment of listening through the fingertips. The dough should feel airy beneath the skin. There is a difference between heavy softness and living softness. Heavy softness sinks. Living softness yields, then rises a little. It has a quiet lift inside it. I let that guide me. Before the dough is shaped, it is easy to think of the loaf that will come later, the smooth top, the rounded body, the warm crust. But this moment belongs only to readiness, not yet to forming, not yet to cutting, not yet to folding the dough into itself. Only this calm pause, this slow check of the rise. Patience here gives kindness to everything that follows. If the dough is rushed too soon, it can resist the hands. It may tear when it should stretch. It may feel tight and unready. But when it has been given enough time, it meets the bench with ease. It allows itself to be gathered. It accepts shape. It holds air more gently. So I wait, if waiting is needed. A little longer beneath the cloth, a little more warmth from the room, a few more quiet minutes in the bowl. There is no loss in that. The old bakers understood this without needing many words. They watched dough as they watched weather. They learned the feel of readiness by returning to it again and again. A hand on the bowl, a glance at the surface, a fingertip resting lightly in the dough. The rise was not ruled only by a clock. It was read, and reading slowly is part of the craft. I imagine a small kitchen at dawn or near evening, with a bowl on a wooden table and a folded cloth laid over it. The room is quiet. The light is soft. Nothing needs to be hurried. The dough waits in its round container, and the baker waits beside it. There is comfort in this shared stillness. Two kinds of patience in the same room, one human, one made of grain and water. When I decide the dough is ready, I do it gently. I do not tear away the cover. I do not press down hard to make it smaller. The air inside is part of the work already done. It should be kept as much as possible. Handled with care, the dough will carry that lightness forward. I dust the work surface lightly, only as much as needed. Too much flour can make the outside dry. Too little can make the dough cling too tightly. There is a middle way. A pale veil across the bench, a soft place for the dough to land. Then I loosen the edges from the bowl. Slowly. A scraper or damp fingertips can help. I move around the side, easing the dough away without pulling too sharply. It stretches, then releases. It gathers, then slips free. The bowl is tipped with care. The dough comes down onto the bench with a soft weight. It settles there quietly, no longer hidden, its surface dimpled and breathing. This is the last moment before shaping begins. And still, there is no rush. I let the dough rest where it has fallen. A minute can be enough. Sometimes a little more. The gluten relaxes after being moved. The dough remembers its softness. The bench becomes a new resting place. I look again. There are bubbles beneath the surface, some large, some small, all of them delicate. I want to keep what I can. Shaping is not about pressing everything out. It is about guiding the dough into a form that can rise again. A loaf needs structure, but it also needs gentleness. It needs to be held without being crushed. So before the first fold, before the first turn, there is this simple attention. The rise has been checked, the softness has been felt, the light spring has answered, and the dough, after its long, quiet rest, is ready for careful hands. By this point in the bakery morning, the dough has changed again. It is no longer resting in one large, quiet mass. It has been divided, weighed, and set aside in gentle pieces, each one waiting for its own small moment of care. The table is lightly dusted. Not too much flour, only enough to keep the dough from clinging. Too much would dry the surface, and the baker knows that the dough needs to remain soft, alive, and supple under the hands. Each piece is lifted with care, not squeezed, not pulled roughly, just gathered, turned, and placed down again. There is a quiet rhythm in shaping bread. It is not hurried work. The hands repeat the same simple steps again and again until the movement feels almost like breathing. A piece of dough is patted gently, just enough to even it out. Then one side is folded toward the center. The other side follows. The top is brought down. The bottom is tucked up. The dough is turned over so the smooth side rests above and the seam is hidden beneath. Then comes the soft tightening motion. The baker draws the dough lightly across the table, letting the surface pull against the bench. This creates a gentle skin around the loaf. Not tight enough to tear, just firm enough to help it rise with shape and purpose. One loaf is finished, then another, and another. The table slowly changes as the work continues. At first, there are only scattered pieces of dough. Then there are rows forming. Small rounds, longer batards, plump oval loaves resting in flour, dusted cloths, or on clean trays. The trays begin to fill slowly. There is something peaceful about this kind of progress. Nothing happens all at once. Nothing needs to. Each loaf receives the same attention as the one before it. The baker does not need to think of the whole morning at once. Only this loaf, this fold, this gentle turn of the palms. A well-shaped loaf carries the memory of the hands that made it. The pressure is light but steady. The movements are simple but practiced. And even when many loaves are being made, each one has its own small character. Some doughs are looser, spreading a little more under the fingers. Some are firm and springy. Some hold their shape almost immediately. Others ask for patience. The baker listens through touch. A hand resting on dough can notice what the eyes might miss, a surface that feels too sticky, a seam that needs one more tuck, a loaf that has grown relaxed and needs to be tightened again before proofing. And always, there is gentleness. Bread dough is strong in some ways and delicate in others. It can stretch and rise. It can hold bubbles within it. But if it is handled too harshly, some of that quiet structure is lost. So the baker works with care. The dough is not forced into shape, it is guided. After shaping, the loaves are arranged with space between them. Each one will grow a little more. Each one needs room to breathe. On the tray, they sit in soft rows, pale and smooth, with a faint dusting of flour over their tops. A linen cloth may be drawn over them, or the tray may be set in a warm, still place. The loaves rest again. Proofing is another kind of waiting. The baker watches for signs. A loaf that has puffed gently. A surface that seems airy beneath the skin. A soft impression from a fingertip that slowly returns. Too little time, and the loaf may be tight. Too much, and it may lose its lift. So the baker moves quietly between the trays, noticing small changes. The bakery air feels softer now. Rows of shaped dough rest beside one another. The work table has thinned out. The bulk of the dough has become individual loaves, each waiting for heat, each holding within it the slow work of flour, water, salt, and time. Then come the finishing touches. Some loaves are brushed lightly with water. Some receive a scatter of seeds, sesame, poppy, sunflower, or rolled oats falling in a gentle shower onto the damp surface. Others are left plain, with only flour on top, a pale veil that will become rustic and beautiful in the oven. There is no need for too much decoration. A good loaf often asks for very little. A simple shape, a quiet finish, a mark made with care. The scoring blade is taken up. It is small and sharp, held lightly. The baker does not press deeply with force. The blade travels quickly, confidently across the surface, one clean cut, or two, or a simple cross. The score gives the bread a place to open as it bakes. Without it, the loaf would still rise, but it might split wherever the pressure found weakness. With a score, the baker offers a path. The bread expands through that line, lifting and blooming in the heat. A long loaf may receive one steady slash along its length. A round loaf may be marked with a cross or a square or a curved pattern that opens softly in the oven. Each mark is brief. The blade touches, glides, and lifts away. Then the loaf is ready. One by one, the trays fill with shaped and finished bread. The earlier quiet piles of dough have become rows of sleeping loaves, marked and waiting. The baker moves slowly now, checking spacing, checking surfaces, checking that no loaf has been forgotten. There is a calm satisfaction in this stage. The hard work is still gentle work. The repetition is not empty. It gathers meaning through care. Shape the loaf, rest the loaf, finish the loaf, move to the next. The trays hold the morning in order. Small rounds lined up neatly. Longer loaves resting side by side. Seeded tops catching the light. Flour-dusted surfaces waiting to turn golden. Soon the oven will take over, and the dough will change more quickly than it has all morning. But for now, there is still this quiet pause between hand and heat. The loaves are ready in their rows, the table is calmer, the air is warm, and the baker stands among the trays, having shaped the morning one loaf at a time. The oven waits in its quiet corner, still cool for the moment, with its dark interior holding the promise of warmth. I turn the dial with a careful hand, not hurried, not sudden. The small click seems to settle the room. A low heat begins to gather behind the door, slowly at first, then with a steady patience. There is something comforting about warming an oven. It is a simple act, but it changes the feeling of a kitchen. The air begins to shift. The metal racks wait in their places. The stone or tray inside, if one has been set there, starts to take in the heat, gently and evenly. While the oven warms, the shaped dough rests nearby. Each piece has become quieter now. The surface has softened and lifted. It holds a delicate fullness, as if it has taken a long, untroubled breath and is keeping it safe. This is the moment for the final touches. I bring a small knife close, or a fine blade, something clean and sharp enough to move without dragging. The hand does not need force. It only needs attention. The cuts are small and neat. A light line across the top, a little opening for the bread to expand as it bakes. Not deep, not heavy, just enough. The blade passes over the surface in one calm motion. The dough parts slightly beneath it, showing a pale seam. It is a quiet mark, but an important one. It gives direction to the rising heat that will soon move through the dough. Another piece receives a cut. Then another. Some are marked with one line, some with two. Perhaps a small cross appears on a round loaf, centered and simple. Perhaps a slanted stroke rests across an oval shape. The pattern is not showy. It belongs to the bread itself. In older kitchens, such marks could carry meaning. They could help tell one loaf from another, or show who had shaped it. Sometimes they were practical. Sometimes they were personal. But in this still hour, They are simply part of the making. Cut, breathe, move on. The tray becomes a little field of pale shapes, each one resting in its place. Now comes the flour. I take a small pinch or lift a little in a sieve. The flour is fine and soft. It catches the light in a quiet way, like morning mist held in the hand. I let it fall over the dough, not too much, just a dusting. It lands like a soft veil across the surface, settling into the small lines and curves. The tops become gently matte, no longer shiny with moisture, but pale and peaceful. The flour gathers at the raised edges and lies lightly in the cuts. It is one of the most restful sights in baking. Flour on dough before it meets the heat. The dusting tells of grain and millstones and fields after harvest. It carries a memory of sacks in storerooms, of wooden bins, of hands brushing powder from aprons. It is humble, but it changes everything it touches. A loaf with a veil of flour looks as though it has already passed through time. The tray is arranged with care. Nothing touches. Nothing crowds. Each piece has enough room to grow in the oven, to rise outward a little, to round its edges and open its cuts. Space matters here. Bread likes warmth, but it also likes room. I turn one piece slightly so it sits in line with the others. I move another just a finger width away. These small adjustments bring order to the tray. Rows form naturally. Not stiff rows, not perfect in a cold way, but orderly and calm. Each loaf or roll has its own place. The eye can rest on the pattern without effort. There is pleasure in this quiet arrangement. It is the same pleasure found in folded cloth, stacked bowls, and herbs tied into bundles. A gentle order that asks for nothing more. The oven continues to warm. Its heat is no longer hidden. A faint warmth comes from the door when I pass near it. The kitchen begins to hold that dry, expectant air that belongs only to baking. The dough waits. The tray waits. And I wait with them. This pause is part of the work too. Before the door opens, before the tray slides in, there is a short stillness where everything is ready, but nothing has yet changed. The cuts are made. The flour has fallen. The pieces are arranged in their quiet order. I check the oven once more. The temperature has nearly reached its mark. The heat inside is becoming steady, wrapping around the racks and the walls, preparing to meet the dough. The tray feels balanced in my hands when I lift it. Not heavy in a burdensome way, but present. It carries the work of the earlier hours, mixing, folding, waiting, shaping, all gathered now into this single careful movement. At the oven door, I pause. The handle is warm. When the door opens, heat comes forward in a soft wave. It touches the face and hands, then rises into the room. The inside glows with a muted amber light. For a moment, the tray and the oven seem to belong to the same breath. Then, slowly, I guide the tray inward. The metal slides onto the rack with a faint sound. The rows remain steady. The flour stays light on top. The small cuts hold their shape, ready for the first lift of heat. I close the door gently. The kitchen settles again. Inside, the dough begins its quiet change. The warmth surrounds it. The surface starts to set. The cuts prepare to open. The pale flour remains like a veil across the tops, soft and still. Outside the oven, there is nothing to rush. Only the low warmth, the waiting tray hidden behind the glass, and the calm knowledge that the bread has entered its next slow turning. Everything has been placed with care. Everything has enough room. And in the warm, enclosed dark of the oven, the simple shapes begin to become bread. The oven has been waiting in its quiet corner of the kitchen. Its door is closed for now, its glass faintly dark, its handle cool beneath the light. Around it, the room seems to settle into a softer kind of attention, as though everything understands that the next step should not be hurried. There is a small turn of the dial, or the gentle press of a button, and then the oven begins to warm. Not all at once, not with sudden force, but slowly and evenly, gathering heat in a patient, steady way. Inside, the hidden elements begin their work. They do not need to be seen to be trusted. Their purpose is simple. They make the air inside the oven warmer, little by little, until the whole chamber becomes ready. At first, there is only silence. Then comes the faint mechanical hum, a soft, constant sound, low and even, like a distant household murmur. It is not loud enough to disturb the room. It simply belongs there, beneath the quieter sounds of the kitchen. The hum of an oven is a comforting thing. It suggests steadiness. It suggests that something has begun and that there is no need to watch it too closely. The warmth is building at its own pace. The metal walls are taking it in. The racks are beginning to hold a gentle heat. The air inside is becoming prepared. On the counter nearby, the trays wait. They have been lined with care, perhaps with parchment lying flat and pale, perhaps with a light brushing of oil. Perhaps they hold little rounds of dough, or sliced vegetables arranged in rows, or something simple and fragrant that will soon change in the warmth. The trays are still cool to the touch. Their edges are clean. Their surfaces are orderly. Each one feels like a quiet promise, not yet fulfilled, but ready. I notice how a kitchen becomes peaceful when every motion has a clear purpose. There is no need for speed. A hand reaches for the oven door. The handle is grasped gently. The door opens with a slow pull, and a wave of warm air slips outward. It is not too much. Just enough to be felt on the hands and face, a soft warmth, dry and even, carrying the faint scent of metal, clean heat, and the beginning of baking. Inside the oven, the racks are waiting in place. Their straight lines catch a little light from within. They are simple, practical things, but in this moment they seem important. They will hold the trays level. They will allow the heat to move around them. They will support the quiet work that happens when food is left in the care of steady warmth. The first tray is lifted with both hands. Its weight is balanced. Not heavy, not difficult, just present. The edges are guided toward the open oven. The tray meets the rack with a soft metal sound, barely more than a whisper. Then it slides inward, slowly, evenly, without scraping or haste. There is something deeply calming about that motion, the tray moving along the rack, the hands adjusting its place, the little pause when it reaches the center where the heat can surround it from all sides. A small correction is made. A nudge to the left, a careful push inward, and then it rests. The second tray follows, if there is one. Again, the movement is unhurried. The hands know what to do. The oven gives off its gentle heat. The room remains quiet around the task. The tray slides into place with a soft, familiar sound. Then comes a moment of stillness. The open oven glows. The trays sit inside, level and prepared. Nothing more is needed from the hands right now. The door closes. The warmth is gathered in again. The hum continues. Now the oven begins its patient work around the trays. Heat flows from the walls, through the air, across the surfaces. It moves into edges and centers. It touches metal, parchment, dough, vegetables, fruit, or whatever has been placed inside. This is a gentle transformation. It cannot be rushed in any useful way. The oven warms, and the trays receive that warmth. The food rests where it has been placed. The kitchen waits with it. There may be a timer set nearby. A small click, A soft beep, a number glowing on a display. But even the timer feels quiet in this space. It is not a command. It is only a marker. A way of remembering while the hands are free to rest or to prepare the next simple thing. The mechanical hum remains steady. It rises and falls only slightly as the oven keeps its promise to hold the heat. It is the sound of consistency, the sound of a machine doing exactly what it was made to do. There is comfort in that. A steady warmth, a closed door, a tray in place, a next step waiting, but not yet asking to be done. This is the kind of pause that belongs to baking. A pause that is not empty. Something is happening quietly and invisibly. The heat is moving. The ingredients are listening to it. The surfaces are beginning to change in small, gradual ways. The kitchen can be tidied now, if needed. A cloth moves across the counter. A spoon is rinsed and set aside. A bowl is placed in the sink. But even these motions remain soft. There is no urgency left in them. The important placing has been done. The trays are where they need to be. The oven holds them with an even, enclosed warmth, and the room settles around the hum, steady, low, reassuring. The readiness for the next step is already forming, not with pressure, not with haste, only with time. When the moment comes, it will be simple. The door will open again. Warm air will drift outward. The trays will be checked with the same calm care that placed them there. For now, there is only the waiting. The oven warming slowly and evenly. The trays resting in their place. And the soft understanding that some things become what they are meant to be only when they are given enough quiet heat, enough steadiness, and enough time. The trays are ready now. They rest on the work table in quiet rows, each one holding its small arrangement of dough, pale, shaped, and waiting for heat to finish what the hands have begun. In a peaceful bakery, this moment is never rushed. The oven has been warming for some time. Its steady heat gathers behind the door, held in the dark chamber like a calm breath. The metal racks inside are hot and ready, and the air around the oven carries that dry, familiar warmth that belongs to early baking. Before anything goes in, there is a pause. A baker looks over the trays one last time, not for worry, not for perfection, just to make sure each piece has enough space to become itself. Even spacing matters in the oven. It lets the heat move gently around each loaf, roll, biscuit, or pastry. If the pieces are crowded, the sides may stay pale where they press too close together. If the trays are filled unevenly, one corner may brown before another. So the baker leaves little paths of air between them. A thumb's width here, a little more room there. The tray is turned slightly, and the pattern settles into balance. There is something restful about seeing small things spaced with care. Nothing competes. Nothing leans too hard against its neighbor. Each one has its place, and each place has a purpose. When the oven door opens, the warmth moves outward in a slow wave. It touches the face, the hands, the front of the apron. It brings with it the faint scent of metal, flour, and heat. The baker moves calmly. One hand supports the tray. The other guides it toward the rack. There is no sudden push, no clatter if it can be helped. The tray slides in with a soft scrape, settling level on the rails. The first tray goes toward the back, where the heat is steady. The second tray follows, set with enough room above and below for air to circulate. In many ovens, heat is not only a matter of temperature, it is also movement. Warm air rises, bends, and travels. It slips over the tops of the dough, passes along the sides, and gathers beneath the pan, so the baker does not stack trays too tightly. A space is left between racks. A space is left between pans. A space is left in the rhythm of the work itself. The oven door closes. The room becomes quieter again. Now comes the simple timer. There are many ways to set time in a bakery. Some use a small dial, turned by hand until it points to the right mark. Some use a square digital clock with a few worn buttons. Some keep a notebook beside the bench, where times are written down in soft pencil. But the purpose is always the same. The timer is not there to hurry the baker. It is there to protect the waiting. A calm hand reaches for it. No more than needed is done. Minutes are chosen. The button is pressed. A small sound confirms that time has begun to count itself quietly. Then the baker notes the position of the trays. Top rack, middle rack, left side, right side. These little details matter because ovens have their own temperaments. Some warm more strongly at the back, some brown faster near the door, some have corners that need a little patience. A careful baker learns these habits the way one learns the character of a room, not all at once, but slowly after many mornings. The bakery settles into the waiting time. Waiting in a bakery is not empty. It has a texture all its own. The work table is wiped with a cloth. Flour is brushed into a small pile and gathered away. A bowl is moved to the sink. A scraper is rinsed and set to dry. These are quiet movements, the kind that keep the room peaceful without breaking the spell of the oven's work. Nothing needs to be loud. A tray that has not yet gone in is covered lightly so the dough does not dry. A rack is cleared for cooling. A clean towel is folded and placed nearby. The baker checks the path from oven to table, making sure there is space to move when the hot trays are ready to come out. There is care even in that. A clear path means no turning too sharply with a hot pan. It means no searching for a place to set something down. It means the body can move without hurry and the mind can remain soft and attentive. The timer ticks on or glows silently. Inside the oven, the first changes begin. The dough warms from the outside inward. Butter softens and melts into layers. Yeast gives its last gentle lift. Steam forms, stretching the crust before it begins to set. The surface changes color so slowly that at first it is almost impossible to see. Pale cream becomes ivory, ivory becomes light gold. The edges begin to define themselves. A faint scent reaches the room. At first it is only warmth and flour, then it deepens. The smell of baking grain arrives in layers, soft and round. If there is sugar, there is a hint of sweetness. If there is butter, there is a quiet richness. If there are spices, they rise gently, not all at once, but one by one. Cinnamon, cardamom, vanilla. The bakery does not need to be filled with sound to feel alive. A spoon rests in a bowl. A cloth hangs over the edge of the sink. The cooling rack waits on the counter. The floor holds the soft traces of the morning's work. Everything seems to listen to the oven. Halfway through, the baker checks the time, not with impatience, just awareness. If the oven needs it, the trays may be turned. This too is done carefully. The door opens only as long as needed. The heat breathes out. The baker reaches in with a dry cloth or mitt, grips the tray securely, and draws it forward just enough to rotate it. The movement is smooth. The tray turns. Back becomes front. Left becomes right. Then it slides back into place. The door closes again, and the oven returns to its steady work. This kind of attention is quiet and practical. It asks for presence, but not tension. The baker does not need to stare through the oven door every moment. The baker has learned the difference between watching and hovering. So the waiting continues. A cup may be rinsed. A scale may be cleaned. The next parchment may be cut to fit another tray. The hands stay busy in small ways, but the pace remains gentle. There is a comfort in measured time, a comfort in knowing that some things cannot be forced. Heat works at its own speed. Dough rises or sets as it must. Color comes when it is ready. The baker's task is to prepare, to place, to set the timer, and then to wait with steadiness. Outside the oven, the bakery holds that steadiness. No drawer is slammed. No pan is dropped. No step is taken without care. Even the smallest actions are softened by the knowledge that something delicate is changing nearby. At last, the timer gives its simple call. It is not a command. It is only a reminder. Time to look. The baker approaches the oven and pauses again before opening the door. A hand reaches for the handle. The door opens and warmth rises into the room. The trays are there, changed by their time in the heat. The pieces have lifted. The edges have colored. The surfaces have become firmer, glossier, or more golden, depending on what they are. The spacing that was given to them at the beginning has allowed each one to bake evenly, with air and heat moving all around. The baker checks gently, a glance at the color, a light touch if needed, a small lift of one corner with a spatula. If they need another minute, the door closes again. The timer is set once more, simply and without fuss. One more minute can make a difference, and there is no need to hurry the end. If they are ready, the tray is drawn out slowly. Both hands hold it steady. The path is clear. The hot metal comes to rest on the waiting rack or heat-safe surface. The oven door closes. The room fills a little more with the scent of baking. Now the pastries, loaves, or rolls begin their next quiet stage. They will cool. They will settle. The crust will finish forming in the open air. But for this moment, the most important work has been done with patience. The trays went in with space around them. The timer was set with care. The baker moved calmly, and the bakery stayed peaceful while time and heat completed their part. And in that gentle order, there is a deep kind of rest. The rest of things placed well, the rest of time allowed to pass, the rest of quiet hands trusting a warm oven to do what it has always done. The room settles into a quieter kind of time now. The dough is no longer only dough. Behind the oven door, it is becoming bread. It rests in the steady heat, and the heat does its slow work without asking to be noticed. There is little to do in this part of the making. No folding, no shaping, no careful dusting of flour across the hands. Only waiting, and waiting in a kitchen like this can feel like a gentle practice. A way of standing still while something hidden changes. The oven gives off its small sounds. A soft tick from the metal as it warms and settles. A faint whisper as heat moves through the chamber. Now and then, a tiny crackle from the crust as it begins to form. These sounds are modest and close. They do not interrupt the quiet. They belong to it. I imagine the loaf inside lifting just a little more, its surface growing firmer, its pale color slowly deepening. The transformation is gradual. It does not announce itself all at once. At first, there is only warmth in the air. Then, almost without a beginning, the scent appears. It is light at first, a soft, grainy fragrance. The smell of flour and water and yeast, now touched by heat. It drifts out from the oven in a thin veil, so quiet that it might be missed if the room were busy. But the room is not busy. The kitchen is still. And in that stillness, the first scent of browning bread becomes very clear. It gathers slowly near the oven door. It moves across the counter. It reaches the wooden table, the folded cloth, the cool place near the window. It fills the space not with force, but with patience. This is one of the oldest kitchen comforts. The smell of bread beginning to brown. Not yet the full richness of a finished loaf. Not yet the deep toasted edge. It is something earlier than that. A gentle promise, a sign that the crust has begun to awaken. The top of the loaf, hidden behind the warm glass, is taking on color. Sugars and starches on the surface are changing. The pale dough is becoming golden. The oven is drawing out a scent that is both simple and complete. There is a faint sweetness in it, a little earthiness, a warm note of grain, and underneath, something soft and round, like the memory of a bakery at dawn. I do not need to open the oven to know that the bread is moving closer to readiness. The scent tells enough. It comes in waves, each one a little fuller than the last. The air seems warmer now, not only in temperature, but in feeling. The kitchen holds the smell the way a blanket holds body heat. Quietly, evenly, without hurry, the soft oven sounds continue. A low murmur, a small, settling click, the nearly silent movement of heat. Nothing else needs to happen. This is the calm middle of baking, the peaceful stretch between preparation and result. The work has been done, and the bread has not yet been taken out. It is a suspended moment, steady and unbroken. In older homes, this waiting time would have been familiar. A person might sit near the hearth, listening to the fire and smelling the loaves as they baked. There might be no clock, only the signs of the bread itself. The color, the scent, the feel of heat on the face when the oven door was opened. Here, too, the senses become the measure. The smell grows a shade darker. It is still soft, but it has more depth now. The browning has begun in earnest. The crust is forming its first fragile shell, and that shell is giving the room its quiet perfume. Bread has a way of making time feel rounder, less sharp at the edges. While it bakes, minutes do not seem to pass in a straight line. They gather, they soften, they become part of the warmth. I notice how little movement there is. A cloth lies folded beside the bowl. A dusting of flour remains on the counter, pale and powdery. The table waits, ready for the loaf that will soon rest there. The knife is still in the drawer. The butter is not yet brought out. Everything is held in calm expectation. The oven continues its quiet work. Inside, moisture rises from the loaf. The crust tightens slowly. The inner crumb expands and sets. On the surface, the color moves from cream to straw, from straw toward gold. The scent follows this change. It is warmer now, fuller, more certain. It carries the comfort of grain fields, though faintly. It carries the patient labor of milling and mixing, of kneading and resting. Yet in this moment, all those steps become simple. They become one fragrance in a still kitchen. There is something restful about not needing to touch anything. The hands can be quiet, the mind can be quiet. The bread asks only to be left in warmth, and so the room remains undisturbed. Outside the kitchen, the world may have its own pace. Footsteps, weather, distant voices, the passing of evening into night. But here, near the oven, the mood stays calm and unbroken. The scent of browning bread continues to unfold. It is not a sudden smell, it is a gradual arrival. First a hint, then a presence, then a gentle fullness that seems to settle into the walls. The kind of fragrance that makes a home feel lived in, even if no one speaks. I think of all the times bread has marked a quiet waiting. Loaves baked before supper, rolls warming for a table, flatbreads puffing near a fire. Each one gave off its own version of this same comfort, this same warm sign that food was coming into being. The loaf in the oven belongs to that long chain of ordinary care. Its browning surface is small, but the feeling it brings is wide. The kitchen breathes with it. A soft tick, a pause, a faint crackle. Then the scent again, deeper and more golden. No one needs to rush toward the oven. No one needs to rush toward the oven. No one needs to check too soon. The best thing now is patience. The bread is near, but not yet finished. It is still gathering its color, still building its crust, still filling the room with quiet warmth. The waiting becomes easy. There is a kind of trust in it. Trust in heat. Trust in time. Trust in the simple signs that have guided bakers for generations. The smell has changed the room completely, but gently. What was once only a kitchen is now a warm place of expectation. The air itself feels nourishing. I let the moment stay as it is. The oven hums softly in its own way. The loaf browns in the hidden heat. The fragrance rises grain by grain, note by note, until the stillness is full of it. And nothing breaks the calm. Only the quiet stretch of time, only the soft oven sounds, only the smell of bread beginning to brown. The moment the oven door opens, the room changes. Not all at once, and not in any hurried way. It is softer than that. A warm breath moves outward, carrying with it the deep, familiar scent of baked bread. It comes forward gently, like something remembered before it is fully named. There is the sweetness of grain, the faint nuttiness of the crust, the quiet warmth of flour and water, changed by time and heat into something simple and complete. I take a cloth in my hand and move carefully. The pans are hot, and the loaves are still holding the heat of the oven. Their crusts are firm now, browned at the edges, touched with darker places where the heat gathered more strongly. Each loaf has risen in its own small way. None of them is exactly the same. One may have opened along the top in a gentle split. Another may have rounded smoothly, like a small hill. Another may have leaned just slightly to one side, carrying the marks of its own quiet becoming. This is one of the gentle truths of bread. Even when the same hands make it, even when the same flour is used, each loaf keeps a little character of its own. I lift the first pan from the oven and set it down on the waiting board. There is a soft sound from the crust, a faint crackle, almost too small to hear unless the room is still. It is the sound of heat leaving, of the crust settling into itself. Then the next loaf comes out, and another. The warm air gathers around them. It moves slowly through the room, touching the table, the cloth, the wooden chair, the quiet corners. The scent begins to bloom fully now, no longer tucked inside the oven, but free in the house. It is a scent that asks for nothing. It does not demand attention. It simply arrives and fills the space with comfort. There is a sense of quiet progress in this moment, not a loud achievement, not a grand arrival, just the feeling that something has been followed through, patiently and well. The flour was measured, the water was warmed, the yeast woke, the dough was mixed, rested, shaped, and baked. Each step was small, each step had its place. And now the loaves sit before me, warm and finished, still giving off the memory of the oven. I let them rest for a moment in their pans. This pause matters. Bread is not ready to be handled too quickly. It has come through heat, and now it needs time to gather itself in the cooling air. The room is warm, but not hot. The kind of warmth that settles over the hands and cheeks. The kind that makes the air feel soft. Outside, perhaps the world is cooler, but inside, the loaves carry their gentle heat, and the house feels held by it. After a little while, I turn one loaf out onto the cooling rack. It releases with a quiet shift. The bottom crust shows itself, darker and firm, with the shape of the pan still remembered along its sides. I place it carefully on the rack, where the air can move around it. Another loaf follows. Then another. They sit side by side, not touching, with space between them. The rack allows the steam to escape without making the bottoms soft. The bread needs this open air now. It needs to cool slowly, evenly, and without being rushed. A loaf cut too soon will give itself away in a different way. The crumb inside will still be setting. The knife may pull at it. The steam may leave too quickly, so the waiting continues even after the baking is done. And there is peace in that. So much of this craft is made of waiting. Waiting for yeast, waiting for dough to rise, waiting for heat to do its work, waiting for the finished loaves to cool enough to be sliced. There is no need to hurry the last stage. I watch the crusts change as they rest. The shine softens. The color deepens in the quiet light. Tiny lines appear where the surface relaxes. Every now and then there is another faint crackle. It is a very small music. The smell continues to grow, then mellow. It spreads through the room in layers. First warm crust, then toasted grain, then that soft, rounded scent from within the loaf, where the crumb is still tender and full of steam. This smell has lived in kitchens for a very long time. It belongs to morning tables and evening suppers. It belongs to cottages, farms, bakeries, and small city rooms. It belongs to hands dusted with flour, to shelves lined with jars, to quiet people moving through ordinary hours. A loaf of bread cooling on a rack is not a complicated thing, and yet it can make a room feel complete. The loaves no longer need my attention in the same way. They are simply there now, giving warmth back to the space around them. I can step away and return. I can tidy the table. I can fold the cloth. I can wash the bowl and set it upside down to dry. The work is easing itself closed, not ending sharply, but settling. The oven door is shut. The heat fades inside it. The pans sit empty now, dark and warm, carrying a few fine crumbs. The board holds the marks of the day. A little flour remains near the edge of the table, pale and soft as dust. Nothing here feels wasted. Even the quiet is useful. I breathe in, and the scent is there again, familiar, gentle, and full. It does not feel new, even if this batch was made today. It feels old in the best way, as if every loaf calls back to all the loaves before it. The bread cools slowly. The room rests with it, and in this simple pause, there is a calm satisfaction. The kind that comes from steady hands, patient time, and a task brought softly to completion. The loaves have come from the oven now, and the busiest part of the work has gently passed. They rest on their cooling racks in the quiet room, lifted just enough from the table to let the air move around them. Each loaf holds the warmth of the oven for a little while longer. It lingers in the crust, in the soft middle, in the small pockets of steam that slowly find their way out. Nothing needs to be hurried here. The bread has its own slow time. On the racks, the loaves settle into themselves. Their crusts deepen just slightly as they cool, growing firm and delicate at the same time. Every so often, there is a tiny sound, a soft crackle, a quiet tick, a small whisper from the surface of the crust. It is not a loud sound. It is the kind of sound that asks for stillness, the kind that can only be heard when the room has become calm again. The heat leaves the bread in invisible threads. It rises into the air, fades near the ceiling, and becomes part of the warmth of the kitchen. The scent is softer now than it was when the oven door first opened. Less bright, more rounded, warm grain, brown crust, a faint sweetness from flour and thyme. The cooling racks make their own simple pattern across the table. Straight lines of metal, small spaces of air. Loaves resting above the surface, neither in the oven nor on the shelf yet. They are in between. and that in-between place is peaceful. Now the workspace can be tidied. Not quickly. Not with the sharp rhythm of a hurried hand. Just slowly, simply, one small task at a time. The oven is closed. The heat remains behind the door, soft and dim. The peel or tray is set aside to cool. A folded cloth lies near the edge of the table, carrying a little flour in its weave. The bowl sits empty now, except for a few traces of dough along its side. The bench has a pale dusting across it. Flour has gathered in the corners and along the edges, where the hands have pushed and turned and shaped. It is time to return the table to stillness. A scraper moves gently across the wood, not scraping harshly, just gathering. A soft line forms ahead of it, flour, a crumb or two, a dry fleck of dough. All of it comes together in a small, pale mound. The motion is slow and steady. Forward, lift, set down, forward again. There is comfort in such a simple movement. The table is not being changed all at once. It is being cared for. Bit by bit, a cloth is shaken lightly over the sink. A few grains of flour drift down. The cloth is folded once, then again, and placed where it belongs. The bowl is filled with warm water. The water loosens what has dried there. It does the work without needing force. This is another quiet lesson of the kitchen. Some things soften when given time. A spoon rests beside the sink. A measuring cup waits nearby. The jars of flour are closed. Their lids turn with a dull, familiar sound. The bag is folded at the top, pressed gently, and set back on the shelf. Salt is returned to its place. The scale is wiped clean. A few specks vanish beneath the damp cloth. The counter grows open again. Clear spaces appear. The small clutter of making gives way to the plain order of rest. And through all of this, the loaves continue to cool. They remain at the center of the room, quiet and complete. Their crackling comes and goes. Sometimes there are several tiny sounds close together. Sometimes there is a long pause. Then another small pop as the crust tightens and settles. It is a gentle language. The bread saying that it is finished with the fire. The bread saying that it is becoming ready. The light in the room has softened. It may be morning light stretching across the table, or evening light lowering at the window. Either way, it moves slowly. It touches the racks. It rests on the rounded tops of the loaves. It catches the fine flour left in the grain of the wood. The sink is emptied. The bowl is rinsed and turned upside down to dry. Water slips from its rim in quiet drops. The scraper is washed and set flat. The cloth passes once more over the table, a circular movement, then a long straight one. The surface changes beneath it, from dusty to clean, from busy to calm. There is no need to polish it perfectly. A work table carries memories in small marks, a faint line from a knife, a darker place where water once sat, a soft shine where many hands have leaned and kneaded. Tidying does not erase the work. It simply lets the room breathe again. The rack is not moved yet. The loaves still need air. So they remain there, patient and warm, with their crusts slowly cooling under the quiet. A hand hovers near one loaf, not touching at first. The heat can still be felt above it. Then the fingertips rest lightly on the side. The crust is firm. The bread is still tender within. It must wait a little longer before slicing. Waiting is part of the loaf. Just as mixing was part of it, just as folding, shaping, proofing, and baking were part of it. Now cooling belongs to the bread as well. The room seems to understand. The tools are in place. The floor is brushed clean. The oven grows quieter as it cools. The jars sit still on the shelf. The cloths hang to dry. There is nothing left to press forward. Only the loaves resting on their racks. only the soft crackle of crust, only the warmth fading by degrees. The kitchen has returned to itself. It is no longer full of motion. It is not empty either. It holds the result of the work, the scent of bread, the calm after making. And in that calm, every small thing seems settled. The table is clear. The air is warm. The bread is cooling. The room is still. For now, there is only the soft work of preparing. A cloth is folded once, then again, and drawn slowly across the surface of the counter. Not quickly, not with urgency, just a steady movement from one side to the other, gathering the faint traces of the day. A few crumbs, a little dust, the soft mark left by a cup or a bowl. All of it is lifted away. The counter takes on a quiet shine, not bright, not polished for display, simply clean enough to greet the next morning without asking anything more. The cloth is rinsed in cool water. It darkens in the hand, then lightens again as it is wrung out. A few drops fall into the basin with small, even sounds. Then the cloth returns to the counter. Slow wiping, slow rinsing. This is the rhythm of closing a room without really closing it. It is not an ending so much as a pause, a way of leaving everything ready so the morning can begin softly. Along the front edge of the worktop, the hand moves with care. The places most often touched are cleaned again, the corner where coins may have rested, the little space where a note was set down, the place where hands leaned briefly while someone waited. Each mark belongs to the day just past. Each one is gently cleared. Nearby, the tools are returned to their proper places. A scoop is wiped clean and set back in its jar. A small brush is tapped once over the bin, then laid on its hook. A measuring spoon rests in its narrow drawer, beside others of different sizes, all nested together in a quiet line. There is comfort in this order. Not a strict order, not a cold one. Just the kind that helps the hands remember where to go. A ledger is closed and placed beneath the counter. A pencil is set beside it, sharpened enough for use, but not too sharp. A stack of small papers is squared at the corners and pressed flat with the palm. The drawer slides shut. Its sound is low and smooth. On the shelf behind the counter, jars are turned so their labels face forward. One by one, flour, sugar, dried herbs, tea, each name waiting in the dimness. The glass catches the lamp glow in narrow lines. Nothing calls for attention. Nothing is out of place. The basin is emptied and rinsed. Water circles once, then disappears. The inside is wiped dry with a second cloth, softer and paler than the first. This cloth is used only for finishing. It passes over metal and stone, over the rim of the basin, over the small ledge where droplets gather. When the hand lifts it away, the place beneath is clear and dry. The cloth is shaken once, gently, then folded. First lengthwise, then across, then into a neat square. It is placed with the others on the lower shelf, where clean cloths wait for morning use. Their edges line up softly. White, cream, grey, and faded blue. Cloths worn thin at the corners from many evenings, just like this one. Folded cloths carry a certain peace. They do not hurry. They do not ask to be used before their time. They simply rest in a small stack, ready for hands that will need them. The floor near the counter is swept with quiet strokes. The broom does not scrape. It whispers along the boards, drawing the day into a small pile. A thread, a leaf brought in on a shoe, a few grains spilled from a sack, all of them gathered together, then lifted away. The broom returns to its place in the corner, bristles down, handle leaning gently against the wall. Beside it, the dustpan is hung on its peg. The peg holds it, as it has held it through many nights. A small, familiar thing. A little mark of habit and care. The chairs in the front room are checked next. Each one is pushed in beneath its table. The legs make only a soft sound on the floor. One chair is turned a little too far, so it is straightened. Another sits too close to the wall, so it is eased forward. Small adjustments, small kindnesses to the room. The tables are wiped in slow circles. The cloth passes over each surface until the wood feels smooth beneath it. A ring of moisture fades. A stray crumb is brushed into the hand. At one table, the edge is rubbed once more, where a sleeve has polished it over time. The wood remembers touch. It remembers bowls set down carefully, cups lifted, elbows resting lightly, hands folded in conversation. Now it rests, too. The front window is checked. The sill is wiped. The glass is left alone, except where a small mark near the latch is cleared with the corner of the cloth. Outside, the street has grown still. Inside, the lamp makes the room feel smaller and warmer. The doormat is shaken just beyond the threshold. Dust falls away into the night. The mat is placed back in its square, lined with the edge of the floorboards. The sign is brought in and leaned against the wall. Its painted letters are quiet now. In the morning, it will stand outside again, facing the street. But tonight, it belongs indoors, like everything else that has been gathered back into shelter. A final walk is made around the front, not a hurried inspection, more like listening with the eyes. The counter is clear. The cloths are folded, the tools are put away, the shelves are straight, the chairs are still. There is a calmness in a room that has been prepared for morning. It feels as if the space itself has taken a slow breath and let it go. Nothing remains except what is meant to remain. A bowl of clean spoons near the serving place, a small stack of cups turned upside down, a jar of fresh water covered with a cloth, a folded apron laid across a shelf, ready for the first hands of the day. The last cloth used for wiping is rinsed again. Cool water runs through it, clear and simple. It is wrung gently, not twisted hard. Then it is laid over a rail to dry before dawn. A drop falls from one corner, then another, then no more. The lamp is turned lower. The room softens at once. Edges blur slightly. The clean counter holds a faint line of light. The folded cloths rest in their quiet stack. The broom waits in the corner. The drawers are closed. The shelf jars stand evenly, like calm thoughts arranged in order. There is no need to do more. The work has found its place. The room has been returned to itself. And when morning comes, it will not have to search for anything. The cloth will be ready. The tools will be where the hands expect them. The counter will be open and clean, waiting for the first cup, the first loaf, the first soft footstep across the floor. For now, the front room sleeps in its own way. Clean counters, folded cloths, a settled, orderly space, quietly prepared beneath the lowering light. The bread was set out with care, not in a hurried way, and not as a task to be checked from a list, but as one of those small, steady gestures that seemed to belong to the quiet hours. A loaf rested beneath a clean cloth, its shape soft in the dimness, its crust holding the memory of warmth from earlier in the day. Beside it, there was a small knife, a folded napkin, and a plain plate waiting nearby. Nothing more was needed. Morning had been made ready in the simplest way, and now the house could return to night. The table looked peaceful beneath the lowered light. A little flour dust still marked the edge of the board, pale and fine, like the last trace of work before rest. A chair had been pushed in, but not too sharply. A cup had been turned upside down on a towel, drying in its own time. The room seemed to understand that everything important had been done. The bread would be there when morning came. The kettle would be filled. The window would brighten slowly, and someone, perhaps still half dreaming, would find the quiet kindness that had been left behind. For now, the lamps were softened. One light was lowered until it was only a warm pool on the wall. Another was turned out completely. The corners of the room returned to shadow, not dark in a heavy way, but restful, as if the house were gathering its edges close. The shine on the table faded. The brass handle near the door caught one last low gleam, then settled into the same gentle dimness as everything else. There was no need for brightness now. The work of the day had passed through its final doorway. The bread was covered, the floor was swept, the dishes were placed where they belonged. A small cloth was hung over the back of a chair, left there to dry overnight. And in the quiet, the house became itself again. Not a place of movement, not a place of voices, but a place of keeping. Keeping warmth in the stones, keeping scent in the wood, keeping the soft shape of ordinary life through the long hours of darkness. Outside, the night continued. It did not hurry toward dawn. It stretched on gently, with its distant air, its hidden paths, its roofs and gardens resting under the same calm sky. If there was a breeze, it moved lightly. If there were leaves, they shifted only now and then. If a bird stirred in the eaves, it settled again almost at once. The world was not empty. It was simply quiet, and the quiet lingered. It gathered in the hallway where the boards had cooled beneath the fading warmth of feet. It rested along the staircase, step after step, rising into the soft dark above. It filled the kitchen, where the covered bread waited without impatience. It touched the window glass, and the sill, and the folded cloth, and the small bowl left upside down by the sink. Everything had entered the same stillness. A stillness made not from absence, but from completion. The kind of stillness that comes when the last lamp is lowered and the last small duty is done. When morning has been thought of, just enough, and night is allowed to remain night. I imagine the room now from the threshold, a table prepared simply, a loaf beneath linen, a lamp breathing out its final glow, and shadows lying softly where they have been invited to stay. There is no need to speak loudly here, no need to explain. The house has told its story in little things, in bread set aside for morning, in light made gentle, in the hush that follows care. This is where the evening rests, not at an ending that closes a door too firmly, but at a pause that remains open, calm, and kind. The night continues beyond the room. The stars, if they can be seen, keep their places. The road outside lies pale in the faintness. The garden sleeps in its own quiet manner. And inside, the house holds all that has been gathered. The warmth of hands, the sound of water poured, the slow work of tidying, the soft promise of bread for morning. One by one, the last thoughts loosen. The table recedes into shadow. The window grows darker. The lamp becomes smaller, softer, lower. And the quiet does not end. It lingers. It lengthens. It becomes the room, the house, the hour itself. So now, with morning ready and the lights low again, the night may continue in peace. Nothing asks to be hurried. Nothing asks to be held too tightly. The bread waits beneath its cloth. The room rests around it, and all is still. All is gentle. All is quiet.